Hey, this is Charlie Langan, and I'm going to be talking about lesson 4.1. So, first, I read chapter 2 of The Changing Economic Context of Cities by Knox and Pinch. So, before capital economies in the 18th century and before the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, cities were basically small scale settlements with a social order stemming from medieval feudalism. They also talk about how in pre-industrial cities, the elite group consisted of those in charge of the religious, political, administrative, and social functions of the city. I was surprised to hear about how merchants and even the wealthiest merchants weren't considered elites. Um, the chapter spends a lot of time talking about the two interpretations of the pre-industrial city from Stroberg and Vance. We don't have enough evidence from comparative studies to judge which of these two interpretations is more accurate, so it's better to look at the common agreement, where that both writers portray a city in which everything physical was at a human scale. It was a walking city in which distances between home and work were tightly constrained. And I thought this was pretty interesting because it sounds like to me as if this characteristic of the pre-industrial city was, one of our main goals, or is one of our main goals for future cities today. Uh, then they talk about the rapidly changing context, or they talk about how the rapidly changing context of the industrial city allowed for Karl Marx to develop a critique on capitalism, and how also in the post-industrial city under neo-Fordism, heavy industries were beginning to decrease in importance while employment in the service industries was growing. Globalization also had major impacts on the cities, leading to the emergence of world cities. It also fostered an increase of competition between cities. For the additional content, I watched the Barry Wilson video on what sci-fi movies can tell us about the future of cities. So he opens up with a picture of him walking to school as a kid, and he says that due to the abundance of cars in cities today, he wouldn't be able to walk to school like that. He also talks about how Total Recall had an automated driver in it, and this idea of self-driving cars will most likely be a part of our lives in the near future, within less than a decade. Specifically, he talks about how Singapore has signed contracts with companies to produce self-driving taxis. He stresses the progress made with autonomous flying drones and how they can be incorporated into our cities in many different ways. And he says that we already have the technology of tomorrow, but we simply lack the infrastructure for it.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Shin. To start off, I looked at Chapter 3 in Megatrends, National Economy, World Economy. This reading explained how world economics has changed a ton since the 1970s. Before the 70s, the US was the biggest player in world economics, and then Japan took over in the industrial sector. The author then goes on to talk about how individual countries are becoming more interdependent, and industrialization in third world countries is growing more prominent. And this basically means that US manufacturers are going to be producing less products as these third world countries are becoming much more specialized in this sector. And instead of resisting economic interdependence like the US has been doing, we should embrace it. And the main point I got from this reading is that because the world is changing so fast, we as the US also need to change with it. Being number one in the industrial sector is very unlikely anymore, so we should start focusing on new technologies such as electronics, biotechnology, robotics, and other things that we have the capability to become number one in, and this could be a big step forward for our country. The second reading I looked at was the Green City study by Dr. Bieri. This article addresses the problem of subjectivity and inconsistency of sustainability indices, which hinders public policy efforts, and he introduces a new sustainability index or approach. So he comes up with two figures or graphs which show the correlation between quality of life and household CO2 emission cost and the strength of land use regulations. Both graphs support his hypothesis that green cities lead to a better quality of life, and I think this literature did a good job showing us that A greener city generally tends to mean that people are happier and have an overall better quality of life. This somewhat goes against what people nowadays look for. What I mean by this is people want to go to a city where there's so much to do and so many places to go, when in reality those places are going to have a worse quality of life as opposed to like the boring areas based on this research. Finally, I watched the COVID-19s in cities video. The main theme was talking about how COVID-19 has influenced the mass migration of people to other areas. Although it's complicated and the reason for relocating is not exactly known, some of the reasons could include a lot of jobs, shifting from office jobs to remote work, people just wanting a change of scenery, or people looking for more affordable areas to live in. We don't know for sure if this trend will continue in the future, but it is a possibility since many people are no longer bound to an area because of work. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the future. That's it for this video, and thank you for watching.